and welcome.
Are we on now? Are we on now?
Welcome
Cool.
to Talking Live. I'm Dr. Robi Ludwig. We are so excited to have you here. Oh my God. We have Jackie Martling on. You can tell he's a comedian.
The
right?
makeup girl just fell off her chair because she's so astounded by me.
That's right. That's right. But before we get into all of the fabulous things that Jackie has
Speaking
done,
of fabulous, I have never seen a therapist wearing hooker's boots before.
well, you've never seen a therapist like me.
And I happen to like you, and that's why I'm here.
Let me tell you, that's why all my patients are cured.
Ah.
They're doing well. But before we start, we want to tell everybody about Hot Bid. So Marvin, come on in.
I am so thrilled that I actually have Jackie opening for me.
I know, right?
Hot what?
Hot Bid. What we do is every Wednesday night we auction off a watch. It's a penny auction site. Watches like this will actually could go for $8. I mean, it's amazing. It's the whole concept. Each bid only moves the price a penny. That's the watch.
If you paid me $8, I wouldn't wear that.
Well, that's okay. But we do have a special gift for you. Okay. I asked the people that have the watches. This is a beautiful company called Exoskeleton. They put gems.
Exoskeleton? That's an excellent name.
So this is a watch we're going to give you tonight.
As a gift.
It's a beautiful dress watch, very, very well made. And it's just a gift. No obligations, no nothing. And I'll just leave that here.
It's probably right twice a day, right? Or does it roll?
It actually rolls.
Really?
Yes. And I will let the jokes continue. I'm going to get out of the way.
Okay.
And I'll take the one watch with me. That one is yours to keep. And I am so excited to have you here. You're like, I mean, I woke up.
Why did the watch with one hand cross the road?
Go ahead.
To go to the secondhand store.
Okay, on that note.
We love it. And we just want to let everyone.
Is that true? A watch?
Yeah, we want to let
You
everybody.
didn't tell me I was getting something free. Now I'm not mad at the whole $15.60 and trying to find this place.
See that? Well, we wanted to make it up to you, and also we want to let everybody know we'll have a link. So if you're interested in the auction, you can participate. But we are.
Hold on.
Yeah.
If you want to buy my watch, the bids are also starting at $8. At Jackie Martling on Twitter, whatever I'm offered. You gonna sign it?
I'm going to sign it.
$7.50.
Yeah, I'm going to sign it, so it's worth more. Okay. I was hoping you would wear it. We're so thrilled to have you.
I am thrilled to have you.
Thank you for joining us.
I think this is fun. My old friend Melissa suggested I come in here, and in spite of Chase Backer, I am here.
Oh, well, we tried to do everyone well, and you have a new book out, actually.
Well, it's not brand new, but it's
a
year and a half, but it is selling into the dozens, and I'm thrilled.
Well, I started reading it, and I have to say it was so good, and I can hear your voice through the words, and you talk about your family. So it's called The Joke Man, Born to the Stern, because Jackie...
No, Joke Man, Bow to Stern.
Bow.
It's funny, though, but if you go looking for it on Amazon, you can't put Bow to Stern. You have to put The Joke Man, Bow to Stern.
Oh,
because if you Google Bow to Stern, you get a 7th grade sailing manual. I swear to God.
We won't analyze that, right?
It's so funny.
But you do many things.
Would you like to hear my therapist joke?
Sure.
So a guy goes to the therapist and he says, Doc, I'm freaking out. I have this terrible dream every night. I dream that there's this guy underneath my bed that's going to come up and chop my head off, and I can't make it go away. That's all I think about every night, that this guy under my bed is going to chop my head off. The therapist says, well, I'll tell you what you do. You come here 3 times a week for 5 or 6 weeks at $200 a session, and I'm sure I can fix your problem. So the therapist doesn't see the guy. And a week later, he runs into the guy on the street, and he says, I never saw you again. What happened? He says, oh, my problem's all solved. He says, well, who solved it? He says, a bartender. I said, how did he solve it? He says, he told me to cut the legs off my bed. Is that a great joke?
That is a great joke.
A clean joke, a therapist joke. Come on, it doesn't get any better than that.
It's a little anti-therapy, though.
Of course it is.
Yeah, so are you somebody who's pro-therapy, anti-therapy, neutral about therapy?
I went to a therapist that was actually an alcohol counselor too, but she saw my wife and she saw my wife's mother and the whole family. And we were having problems, so we kind of went for marriage therapy. But then I went on my own, And she was delightful and so smart. But I was raised by wolves. But they didn't start as wolves. The family disintegrated, which can happen. I say it in my book. It's so funny because my father married my mother, and they got home from the war. Hey, fix me up, right? So my father married my mother. Then my father's brother married my mother's sister.
Oh, wow.
Okay. They move into the house where they had grown up. They buy out from the other brothers and sisters. My father and mother are downstairs, and my aunt and my uncle, that are brothers and sisters to my family, my parents, are upstairs. It was literally the Cramdens and the Nortons. Okay. My aunt was Trixie. I mean, you couldn't do this math. And I was the first kid in 1948. So for the first 2 years of my life, my mother, my father, and upstairs my aunt and my uncle, I'm sure every step I took, every breath, every poop I made, I'm sure they were like fawning over me for 2 years.
Life was good.
And then after 2 years, my mother had another kid. My aunt and uncle moved upstairs so they could have, closed off the upstairs. And they had their own kid. My mother had a second kid, and my father started drinking a lot more. And I went from 4 parents to none. And my rap is that for the last 69 years, I've been going, where the frig did everybody go? I'm over here.
You're trying to make up for it with your audience,
but
right?
So, you're right. And I don't know if there's any truth to that, but it makes total sense. I was the first kid. Think about when your sister or brother has a baby. It's like, whoa, look at him. Oh, what did he do? Then all of a sudden they're just gone.
But think about it. It prepares you for real life, right? If you were just fawned over and were an only child, you wouldn't get how real life works because there's always competition out there. There's
Robi, I got a mouthful of real life. I had real life up to here.
You've had it up to here.
I don't recommend real life for anyone. That's why I drink.
Well, let me just mention.
Although I quit that 18 years ago.
Yes, and you are sober 18 years.
So what we're saying about therapy, because I always go on tangents, is my therapist said, well, you had a very miserable childhood. And I said, I did not. In the beginning, it really was splendid. We were the Waltons, my mother and my father, and they'd go buy ice cream cones and we'd watch Ed Sullivan. And it really was as wonderful as it could have been. She said, no. And I said, listen, on my kindergarten report card, the teacher wrote, Jackie has a very sunny disposition. I said, do you think at the age of 5 I was acting for Mrs. Miller, saying, what, things are pretty rotten at home, but let me put on a good face,
Yeah.
So I argued, and then there was the
Was
day.
she right though?
Well, no, I punched her and I went home. I never.
I'm glad you worked it out in a nonviolent way. In the book, you talk
I
about.
love these shoes. Oh man, there's a word for them.
These are the shoes that.
You know what they call those heels? I'm not going to say it out loud because it's a family show.
They're fine heels.
They're F-me heels.
Oh my goodness, they are not. I have those at home, but these are not.
Well, why wouldn't you wear them when I'm here?
I should have next time because I want you to come back.
Well, you haven't finished yet.
All right. Theodore Roosevelt.
I can't believe you have a producer named Marvin. Yeah. That is so producer.
Yeah, well,
Marvin.
we like
it's never Eddie or Harry. It's like Marvin. It's Merv,
Yeah, and he's a huge fan of yours. So what do you make out of that?
He's literally huge, right? He must be 400 pounds.
Oh, stop it. Oh, my goodness.
He's a beautiful guy.
Let's focus.
Love you too.
Theodore Roosevelt is somehow connected to your family?
We have not proved it. And with a swipe of DNA, it would be truth or not truth. But I have come so close to getting DNA from a Roosevelt, and then it's fallen through every time. It's like that dream where you have with something's just out of reach.
Like maybe you asked
anybody, they just don't want to help. They don't want to help. What happened was Theodore Roosevelt was born in 1858, and his father at the time was hunting in Maine, which was very common. He was a philanthropist, but he also was a playboy and did whatever he wanted because he was that rich. Definition of a playboy is somebody who's 2 generations of their family hasn't had to work. That was the literal definition of a playboy. So he's in Maine. 9 months later, my great-grandfather is born, and 30 years later, this is in the wilds of Maine, 30 years later, he surfaces in Oyster Bay, Long Island, and he is running Sagamore Hill for Theodore Roosevelt. Okay, and he had 8 kids. My grandmother was his oldest, and his youngest kid was an incredibly famous politician who was the chairman of the National Republican Party in the 50s, and he was Eisenhower's campaign manager both times. And it was the connection. He was named by Roosevelt's daughter. I mean, the connection, all the dots are totally connected, except we don't have firm proof. But if it's true, Theodore Roosevelt is my illegitimate great uncle, whatever you call it, my great grandfather's brother.
Do your instincts tell you that it's true?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My cousin, my distant cousin, John Hammond, is the town historian of Oyster Bay, and he is cemented on this. I mean, there's so many factors. It's unbelievable, you know.
like
and the thing is, everybody knew.
Yeah.
But those generations died out by the time we got wind of this rumor, and there's nobody to ask, it's a fun. I wrote it up in the book. It didn't belong in that book. So many people, what are you doing? We want to read about Howard Stern. We don't want to hear about your stupid uncle.
I actually liked it, but
it was interesting.
I thought so. I enjoyed the piece about your roommate and how you reunited with your roommate, your college roommate.
Great character.
Michigan State, right?
Michigan State.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. People come up and say, "Hey, man, you went to Michigan," and I used to correct them. And then I stopped correcting him because saying University of Michigan, that's handing me 600 SAT points that I did never earn. You know, Michigan is an Ivy League school, and Michigan State is a cow college. You know.
Well, I mean,
but I did very well at my cow college.
You've done so many things. You have been in a rock band. I think you still are in a rock band.
But not to any. You know, there are people that have done different things. I was not in a famous rock band. I was in a band that for the 70s, we drank, smoked pot, got laid, and had fun. That was the extent. As far as we were concerned, we were a total success because all those check marks is all we set out to do. We did not set out to be rich and famous, and it worked out perfectly.
Now, you've made a lot of money in your career. Many people know you as the former head writer for Howard Stern.
I had some very, very good years.
During the days when it was on E, right? That's when you were writing for him?
I think the E show came alive in like 92. We went through so many, you know. I started in 83 and worked one day a week for free for 3 years at WNBC and then at K-Rock. And then we went to mornings. And he asked me to be on 2 days a week, but I was writing notes and making them funnier. So, boom, I was on 5 days a week. And then we syndicated. I say we, so it's not me, but we syndicated to Philadelphia and Washington, which was a big deal because morning radio is supposed to be local. People say, that can't work. It cannot work. And it worked. And then, like, after a year, we were kicking ass. And I used to get interviewed, and Howard and Robin would rarely do interviews, so that I was always getting interviewed because I was all great guns. And they'd say, you know what, you guys are so good, but how long can it last? And I'd be, you know, all I know is we're having fun. A few years later, we're #1 in LA, and a few years later, we got the E show, and then the Channel 9 show, and then Howard wrote a book, and then we got the movie. He kept reinventing, and like, you know, 8 years later, they're like, you guys are great, but how long can it last? And it lasted, you know, it's very funny because the last day I worked in March of 2001, I walked into work and it was Howard and Robin and me and Fred. And the first time I walked into NBC in February 1983, it was me and Howard and Robin and Fred. And I was so proud of that because nothing lasts. Not bands, TV shows, nothing lasts that long. And it was the same 4 people. But I also, to my dismay, I was the one that screwed it up and, you know, said, you know, if you're not going to pay me more, you know, I'm going home. Which some people say is the stupidest move, the not stupidest. Who knows whether it was or it wasn't. But they really could have shared some of the shekels. You know, they really could, you know. Like, no, Ringo, you know what? You're not going to get a full share, you know. I didn't want a full share. I wanted to.
Yeah, yeah. And it also sounds like in just reading more about what happened during that time is that your lawyer advised you to go for the top dollar, the top money.
Yeah, well, you know, I told him what I wanted, and he was just, you know, it's not then, it's all on me, you know, because I said what I want, and he, you know, and he was my conduit, you know. Excuse me, Maureen, that means my way to get there.
Maureen is our makeup artist.
That's what conduit means. I don't want to leave her out. She's so adorable.
She's very adorable. I know.
I don't want to leave her out of the conversation.
Stuttering John recently came out with a book.
I heard that. I have not read it, but I hear it is
that was
full of words, syllables.
Scathing about Howard Stern.
Really? I didn't read it because I don't want to know what he, you know, I thought mine was gentle. I didn't have anything horrible to say. You know, the things that irked me and really got under my skin would be trivial to the average person because they're kind of subtle.
What irked you?
You know, I'm not even gonna go into it, but it's not like, you know, he ran over me with the car. You know, it was small type things that people would say, well, that's weird. You know, I haven't read what John bitched about because then if somebody asks me about it, I won't have to say that's the way I remember it. That's not the way I remember it. But I'm sure it's true. You know, it was a Nazi regime, and without, I mean, that's not even an exaggeration. You know.
Well, Stuttering John basically described Howard as somewhat of a vindictive narcissist. Is that anything you saw during the time that you were there?
Well, that probably is right if you're limited to 2 adjectives.
You can add more.
People, you got to understand, this is Stuttering John's book, so the entire thing is 4 words. You know. So. Do you know that joke?
Let me tell you,
the guy
Jackie,
comes in and says to the doctor's office, and he sees another guy in the waiting room. He says, "Well, why are you here?" The guy says, "I got a bad prostate." He says, "A bad prostate. What's that?" The guy says, "I pee like you talk." I'm killing it here. I'm trying to impress Maureen.
Well, Maureen is very impressed. You see, she has not stopped smiling.
She hasn't stopped texting. She hasn't heard a word I said.
Let me just tell you. And also, she made you look very pretty. So, you know, then there's that.
And there's that.
Yeah, then there's that. What happens if someone gets on your bad side?
This is my good side.
Oh, this is your good side? No, I mean, like you know, if
nobody
you
gets on my how? What can they do? You know, I've been on stage for 40 years dealing with whoever. You know, like, you know, it doesn't. Grudges and, you know, I mean, I get angry, and I'm sure there's grudges I've been carrying forever, but I don't, you know, who keeps those in the forefront? Right. You know, in my bad side, you know. 40 years of dealing with club owners, you know. If you got pissed off at every club owner, you know, you'd go crazy. You just roll with everything, you know.
Yeah. And
you know, I have never, I don't think in my life, beeped my horn at somebody in traffic. Why? Mm-hmm. You know, I you know, every girl I ever went out with is, why are you in the right-hand lane going slow? I'm thinking, you know.
And it's, I read somewhere that you can remember up to 150 jokes in your head.
No,
is that true?
I remember a gazillion jokes. What they're talking about is when I do my act, it probably seems like 800, but it's probably in between 130. If I could count them and tell you the exact amount, because it's pretty much the same act every night. But say 150 jokes, but that's the culmination. I've put out 6 different CDs, and they're all 80 minutes long. And the reason they're 80 minutes long is when I first put out a CD, that was the maximum amount of spoken word that would fit on a CD. So I made them 80 minutes, and I put out 6 of them, and there's not a repeated joke on the 6 CDs, which is 80 minutes times 6. That's 480 minutes. That means my last album, that's the jokes I would have got to after standing at the bar with you for 8 hours. But somehow they're still killers. But so my act nowadays is the very, very best, the cream of what was on there and new stuff I've heard that I really like. I'm not a comedian, I'm a joke teller. I tell old, stale jokes.
What's the difference, do you
Well, you know, comedians talk about their lives, they talk about, you know, whatever's going on, or talk about the world and do, you know, stories. And I tell jokes. There are 2 rules to being a stand-up comic. Number 1 is you don't tell old jokes. And number 2 is you never laugh at yourself. That's all I do is tell jokes and laugh at myself. I break my leg coming out of the gate. But I'm the best at it. And I don't mind saying I'm good at it. But people say, how do you remember? Like the first thing they'll say, because I sell my books and my stuff at my shows. This Saturday night, February 9th, 7:30 at Central Stage in Yonkers. I would love to see you. February 22nd, 23rd at 9:30 at Uncle Vinny's Comedy Club in Point Pleasant.
And we'll
New
also have
Jersey.
a link up so people can find out where you are.
And I sell my books,
yes,
and I sell my CDs. And the first thing people always ask is, how do you remember all those jokes? And the analogy I've come up with, which makes probably no sense, is if you're driving from Oyster Bay on Long Island to Manhattan on the expressway, how do you remember to go past all those exits? Because they're along the way. Now, those jokes in my head are along the way. I just go past all the exits. Now, I can get to any joke and I can veer off. I can get off the expressway and do 20 jokes about this, or talk about this, or talk to the crowd. And I can either come back in where I got off. I can come back in a little further on the Cross Island Parkway. You know, I just have it so mapped out in my head.
Is this a skill that you needed to develop? Is it something that it's taught? Were you born funny?
It's just, I'm sure it just happened along the way. Like for some reason, I mean, you know, all the stories are in my book, but when I was a kid, the jokes just stuck to me. They just stuck to me. And the story I tell on stage is, I'm from a very small town. And in 3rd grade, we're having a snowball fight, okay? Now, in East Norwich, Long Island, on the North Shore of Nassau County, when you're having a snowball fight and you get cold and wet and you come in, you didn't have a dryer to put your stupid clothes in and fluff them up so you can put them on warm and go out and finish. You sat and you shook and you were blue and you drip dried and froze until you were warm enough and dry enough to go finish the snowball fight. So I'm in 3rd grade and he's in 2nd grade and he's in 4th grade, because small town, small gang. And my cousin walked in who was in 8th grade. And like, whoa, my 8th grade cousin, 5 years is a huge leap, okay? And he pulled out a piece of paper and he read a filthy poem. And every time I tell this story, I can see the guys. I know who they are. They're still, a couple of them are in touch. And he's in 2nd grade. They were mesmerized. They were instantly frozen to my cousin and laughing and so entertained. They instantly forgot they were cold, forgot they were wet, and something in my brain must have gone like, how neat is that?
That's
or something. And I've remembered every joke clean, dirty. They have just stuck to me, and I was always the last guy at the bar and the last guy at the party, telling jokes, listening to jokes. Everybody is ordering Huckleberry Finn. I'm ordering joke books in 4th grade. And I graduated from Michigan State as a mechanical engineer in 1971, and I used my diploma to roll pot. You know what I mean? All I care when we had our band, we used to play our songs and tell jokes, and play our songs. And so when you tell jokes and people know you're a joke teller, they can't wait to tell you their favorite joke or tell you one you haven't heard, which still goes on to this minute.
I bet.
And in 1975, 74, we were in this band and we'd take a break. I'd be at the bar and somebody would come up and say, I'll tell you a joke you haven't heard. And I used to say, you know what? I'll count down from 10. And by the time I get to 0, if I don't know the joke you're trying to tell me, I'll buy you a drink. And I never bought a drink. And that's like 45 years ago. I already knew, or you know, of course there's new ones, and of course you get stumped along the way, and of course.
Do you create them as well?
No, some, but
Okay.
very, very few. Some classics, but but it's really funny because all I do is tell old jokes, and I kill people with these old jokes. And nobody used the stories about the celebrities that have tried to tell me a joke and got shut down are just classic. But when I was on the Stern Show, I was writing him notes as we went along. None of them were jokes. They were all single lines. Like if you were talking to Marvin, okay,
yeah,
and you were talking to him and having a conversation, and I thought of something funny to say to add to the conversation because I'm reasonably smart and funny. Instead of saying it, I would write it down.
I would say.
And you would say it. Now, it took Howard's genius to work that into the conversation, but it was seamless. Nobody had any idea what was going on. There's still people that, when they hear that, some don't even believe it. But he could work it in so seamlessly. And when we went to mornings, I was a conduit. So
there's a test afterwards.
I was a conduit, so Fred could write things. So Fred could hand them to me, who was the sound guy and the other writer. So Howard not only had his sense of humor, he had my sense of humor and Fred's sense of humor. So not only was he 3 times as funny, they were 3 distinct, different senses of humor. So he was coming at you from every angle, which was made him beyond brilliant. But those weren't old jokes. They were never old jokes. I probably told 5 actual jokes in the whole course of the whole 18 years.
As a writer, do you get the same thrill of seeing that your jokes work through someone versus telling them yourself?
It's all great. It's all great.
Does it feel different?
I'll tell you what we did. And the things that you miss are very, crazy. Like I was in a situation where so few people are, and where I'll never be again. Because if you're a screenwriter, okay, and I write a funny scene for Billy Crystal, and you write the scene, and it's funny. With any luck, and it takes a lot of luck, that scene is going to stay in the stupid script and stay in the movie till the movie gets made. It finally gets made and finally makes it to the screen, and there's your joke. If you're a stand-up comedian, you could think of a joke, something funny to say that night. You think about it, and that night you go on stage and you do your joke. I was in a situation where Howard would be talking and something would dawn on me and I would scribble it, and like within 10 seconds from the time the thought went into my brain, there were literally millions of people from coast to coast laughing out loud and seeing the people in the other cars laughing out loud. Now that it doesn't get any more immediate than that. Yeah. And people would say, I'd look across on the expressway, it'd be crowded and he's laughing and she's laughing, that is a kick.
I remember, and I don't know why someone told me this. One of my childhood friends, sadly, her brother had died of cancer, and the father would listen to the Howard Stern show, and it would be therapeutic for him. He would laugh the whole time. So you really don't know what people are going through as they're enjoying this kind of entertainment.
It was funny. It was like a civil war. There were families where the husband listened and the wife hated the show. And there were families where the wife loved the show and the husband hated it. It was like, and some guys and girls, they weren't allowed to listen, or they were so young that the parents thought they didn't know what was going on. The greatest one, you always get exaggerated situations. I went to a party at Gibson, and a guy told me, and he said, I'm not making this up. He said, your laugh is literally the first thing I remember as a child, because I was in the back seat in my car seat, and I don't think I even understood what people were talking about or saying, but your crazy laugh would, like a parrot, it'd be over and over and over on the show, because they'd always be listening to the show. And he said as he got older, he realized where that came from, and he said it was the damnedest thing, which is like, that's crazy. Because people say, oh, you raised me. But when they say that you raised me, that means they started listening when they're 12. But this is a guy who's in diapers, which
He
is
really started
such an
early.
exaggerated situation.
Do you still talk to Howard?
No.
No.
Well, if you asked him how's our relationship, he'd say fine. You know, not that I don't talk to him. There's just no occasion for that ever to happen.
Do you have?
He usually sends me a birthday card.
Oh, okay.
And my birthday is Valentine's Day.
Oh, happy
So
birthday.
it's coming up, so we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Do you think you'll get one?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but maybe it's funny. I don't know about last year, whenever, but I get birthday cards from him, and they're very nice. And it's from him personally written, but I know it's not him.
Who is
it's too neat, and it's obviously somebody who learned how to sign his name with his specific age. And I'm like,
Are you
I want
sure?
to just send it back and say, do you have any idea? I don't know anybody that, I mean, it's like somebody used a ruler to write a 3-line, you know. And you know what? I might be so shallow that he's sitting there and write me a nice card, and I'm such a dick that I'm like thinking it's not.
Yeah. But
But
obviously,
you got, you know, at the age of 70, I know that not always, but 99% of the time, your gut is right.
Yeah.
You know, you meet somebody and 10 seconds later, you're like, I don't like this person. And you hope that you're wrong, and then it just pans out.
And then you find out you're right.
Or you meet somebody you really like them, but you know, occasionally along the way, you find out I'm a jerk. I was wrong, but not that much. You, I don't know yet.
Oh, you're undecided about me.
The jury is out.
All right.
The jury is out.
Okay. How long do you think it'll take?
Another look at the shoes.
All right. Listen.
Now, Marvin's your husband?
No, Marvin
Wow,
is not.
more
Wow. Spreading rumors. No, Marvin is my longtime friend. Yeah, we go out together with our spouses.
Oh, so you're married?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so is Marvin.
White guy?
Just not to be. Yeah. Listen, my Jackie was white. Yeah.
Okay. And you got kids?
I do.
How many?
I have 2 kids.
Wow.
2 teens.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Don't let
So,
them watch this show.
I'm used to honesty.
Wow.
Yeah. But my son will enjoy you.
Teen is 13 or 19?
Well, 19 and 16.
Okay.
Do you have kids?
No.
Okay.
No.
You decided no kids? You're waiting for Maureen to be ready?
No, it's a long story, but we weren't able. But that's a whole crazy thing. You know, it's having kids is as natural as falling off a truck, and people are flushing kids down the toilet and putting them in garbage bags. And meanwhile, when you can't have a kid, it's beyond sad. But people have no sensitivity to it because there's nothing to it unless, you know, it's like air.
Yeah.
You know, you hear that air's not a big deal unless you're not getting any.
That's
you know,
right.
just like sex.
That's right. But you talk about a lot of difficult topics. Like you talk about your sobriety and how it was hard won.
But you know what? It wasn't that hard won. So people tell me I didn't have a problem, and I'm like, okay. Tell my ex-wife. It's crazy, and there's a great story in the book. But this is, you know, I tell people, if you're thinking, in the back of my mind for a decade or more, I was like, you know what, someday you got to quit. I knew that someday I had to quit because.
And you talk about it in the stories in your book. It's pretty obvious. You're drinking, you're blacking out, you're having issues.
You know, but you know, everybody I knew that drank, you know, so often, like what'd we do last night? You know, I'll never forget the day that Gary came in one time and said, hey, Howard, I was talking to Jack, and he said there was actually times he drank so much he couldn't remember what he did the night before. And I'm sitting there, and my friends are home thinking, if you can remember what you did the night before, you weren't drinking. You know what I mean? But it's all where you're from and who you're hanging out with. But it's crazy. But my favorite story in the book is my buddy's mother is an alcohol counselor and had been for 25 years or something. And she said, you know, Jackie, I never discussed your drinking with you. You just quit? And I said, yeah, you know, no DTs or any of that. I didn't go to AA. I just said, all right, I'm done. And she said, well, you had a problem, you know? And I said, Al, how can I tell if I had a problem? My wife and I never sat and had a couple beers and watched TV. I never had a beer and watched a Yankee game. You know, I never got up in the morning and needed a shot of, and I look and she's smiling. I said, what's so funny? She said, anybody that describes their drinking and uses the word never is an alcoholic, which was so astute, like, because I'm saying when I didn't drink, and I always thought that was, pretty interesting. So I'll never know, but I stopped,
Well, I'm glad you got healthy. We do something here called.
I didn't say I got healthy.
Well, healthy in that regard, and you're
You
proud
know.
of it, as you should
I'd
be.
get drunk and forget where my heroin was,
Which is the place you never want to be. Let me do the quick five with you. We like to ask some quick questions. So
I've been doing the quick five.
I know. Well, I like to.
I'm sure I'm not the first person that said that. It was a joke, Maureen.
Would you like Maureen to join us for the quick five?
You want to join us, Maureen?
Join us?
No, I have a beautiful girlfriend, Barbara. I love you. I'm only flirting with Maureen because it plays good on camera.
Okay,
now turn off that camera. You want to join us? She said no.
She said no. She's a little shy. If you had to pick she's a little shy. If you had to pick out a new name for yourself, what name would you pick?
Huge penis.
Huge penis. There you go. We could start calling you that right now.
Well, Maureen was already calling me.
Maureen was calling
No,
you
a name for myself. No. It's so funny because I never really had a nickname. Eventually I did. Eventually my friends started calling me a chief. And chief was not for any other reason except to be insulting. Because I was, let's do this, let's do that. And they called me chief. It was meant to be a shot. But I never had a nickname growing up. And you always make up nicknames for all your friends and break everybody's chops. And I went away to Boy Scout camp. And I didn't go with my troop. I wanted to go with the rabble rousers, so I meet new people from around Long Island. So, the first day, they're like, all right, say, what's your name? And what do people call you? So I said, well, my real name's John Martling, but, my nickname is kind of Jackie Martling, but most of my friends call me Skip. Because I always wanted to have a nickname. I figured I'm going to be Skip. For 2 goddamn weeks, people are Skip. And I'm like, whoa. I had no idea to talk to me. That's so funny.
When you're having a bad day,
I don't have them.
What do you do to make yourself feel better?
I don't have them.
You don't have them.
Every day is a bad day.
Every day is a bad day. Okay.
No, what do I do? You know what? It's so funny because I'm home a lot. My girlfriend goes to work and I'm home in Bayville and I'm a people guy. And I'll be feeling crummy and I'll go down to the post office and I'll break chops for 2 seconds and make my mail guy Larry laugh, and I'm good.
Yeah.
I could go in and make the deli guy laugh, and that's as good as having a great show for 1,000. It's just
when you're using your talents and
interacting with people. Being alone is
torturous.
Is I don't know.
Can be.
It should be great, and I got 4 books going at once. I love reading, but if I can, stop to go talk to the guy cutting the lawn, that trumps everything,
What is the funniest thing you've ever seen a stranger do?
Something that really made me laugh. But like I said, my father was a drinker, and for whatever reason, we went down to Oyster Bay, and we were shopping or something. And it was a very wintry night, and it was cold and icy. And I think it must have been one of his old drinking buddies, but this guy was walking along, and he slipped on the ice and somehow wound up ass first in an open garbage can with his legs and his hand. And my father never laughed, and I thought my father was going to have a heart attack. He laughed, and that was one of the single funniest things. Another thing, people interact and it gets smooth. Hello, Dr. Ludwig, how are you? Nice to see you. Eventually becomes, hey, Ro. Yeah. Okay. So I guess I had been away to college or something for a while, and I had a little brother named Jimmy. He's not with us anymore, very sadly, but he was a little kid. He was brilliant. That's what killed him. He was way too smart for this planet, but he was, from the time he was a kid, he's brilliant. And he was so little that he was like standing on the seat. It was long before seatbelts and crap. He's standing on the seat, and my father, I think, came to pick me up at the station, whatever. For some reason, I'm with them in the car for the first time in a while. And my father was always driving around, and he always had Jimmy with him, always. And my father drove so slow. And right near my house is a hill that's like crazy, like, I mean, a really, really steep hill. And so I'm in the car, and my little brother's here, and my father is driving. The important thing being that this scene must have happened so many times prior with no audience, which makes it just so much funnier. And we're going up this hill so slow. And when we get to the very, very top, my father slows down even more and crawls around. And as he's crawling around the turn, my kid brother goes, "Ah!" And then my father goes, "Jane!" And it was like a stimulus. It was Pavlovian, like they had played that. I thought I was going to have a heart attack, which of course pissed my father off to no. I've seen a lot of funny things, but that was something funny.
Who is the kindest person you know?
Honest to God, my girlfriend is right up there.
So nice.
Which is it's embarrassing, you know. She's way, way too nice, and I'm a jerk. I mean, I love her, but you know, so many kind people, you know.
But it's nice that your girlfriend is one of the top ones you
Yeah,
mentioned.
no, and I'm not just saying that. God, you know, so many kind people. I just said to somebody not long ago, "You're the kindest person I know." Who the hell was? I don't even know who it was. But
well, it wasn't me. That I know.
Oh, it could have been. It could have been you.
Mind. Yeah, that's okay.
But they're really. I know a lot of very kind people, and kind people are usually, not always, but usually very smart.
Yeah.
You know, because it, you know, and I love smart people because they're interesting.
And you're smart, so I
yeah.
If your life was a movie, what songs would be on the soundtrack?
Like my favorite songs or songs that would pertain to me?
Pertain to your life. Or it could be your favorite songs. It's your movie. You get to decide.
I Can't Feel It Anymore by Van Morrison. I mean, I love the Eagles. You know, if I was on a desert island, I only had one CD, it would probably be the best of the Eagles.
Okay.
But what describes my life? I don't know. You know, Bitter Old Man. Is there a song named that?
We can write one. Maybe you could play it with your band.
Bitter Old Man with a Huge Penis. Is there a song?
That's going to be my new favorite song. Listen, we are so thrilled that you came to visit us.
Are we done? I didn't even get started yet.
Your birthday, yes, and we even went long. Don't forget to check out Jackie and also his book, which has been around, but it's really good, and it definitely has your
also
voice.
available as an audio book, which was so much fun to record.
There's CDs, there's children's CDs, there's lots of different
the two world's funniest joke books. That's the forward by Howard Stern and the forward by my good friend Penn Jillette. The other one, and there, if you ever buy a joke book, buy that because it's the funniest jokes ever.
We'll have links up for everybody, and also Jackie is also doing a show on Saturday night in the Yonkers, so we'll have a link up. And thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next week just in time for Fashion Week. See you then.